A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Welcome back to another installment of My Weird Prompts. You're listening to episode 1963, and today we are venturing back into the dimly lit, slightly dusty, and always suspicious world of Conspiracy Corner. For those of you who have been with us for the long haul, you know exactly what this means. This is the segment where we let our long-suffering producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, step out from behind the mixing desk, put on his tinfoil hat, and present a theory that has been keeping him up at night. The rules are simple and established. Hilbert is going to lay out a case for a secret truth that the rest of the world is too blind to see. After he presents his evidence, myself and the ever-analytical Herman Poppleberry will step in as the High Court of Street Food Justice. Herman, I can see you have your notepad ready. We will be judging Hilbert on two specific scales. First, credibility. Is this actually plausible, or is it total lunacy? That is 0 to 10. Second, imaginativeness. How much creative effort did it take to connect these dots? Also 0 to 10. At the very end, Herman and I will cast our final votes. Convinced. Or not convinced. Today, Hilbert is taking us on a culinary journey to the Middle East. He has been obsessing over the streets of Jerusalem lately. No, I love a good snack as much as the next guy, but Hilbert claims there is something deeply sinister happening behind the deep fryers and the pita bread. He is talking about economic anomalies, ancient family ties, and a level of market saturation that should be impossible in a rational world. Is it just lunch, or is it a shadow organization? I am genuinely excited for this one because I have always wondered how there can be 4 shops on one corner and they all stay in business. Herman, try to keep an open mind. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the microphone our very own producer and lead investigator of the bazaar, Hilbert Flumingtop. Hilbert, the floor is yours. Give us the truth about the falafel phalanx.
Welcome back to Conspiracy Corner. I am Hilbert Flumingtop, your long-suffering producer, finally given a microphone for something worthwhile. Today, I am going to ruin your lunch. Or more specifically, I am going to ruin your perception of the most ubiquitous street food in the Holy City. We are talking about the falafel phalanx. You see, when you walk down Jaffa Street or navigate the narrow alleys of the old city, you see a vibrant, chaotic marketplace. You see dozens of falafel stands, each claiming to have the secret recipe, each ostensibly competing for your 10 or 20 shekels. It looks like the ultimate free market. But I am here to tell you that the steam rising from those fryers is a smokescreen. It is a theater of competition designed to mask a centuries-old monopoly that would make the East India Company blush.
Hilbert, I appreciate the gravitas, but are you really telling us that the guy selling me a pita for 15 shekels at the corner of King George is part of a global syndicate?
Not global, Corn. Specific, targeted, deeply rooted. Let us look at the facts. Fact number 1. Jerusalem has one of the highest densities of food service establishments per capita in the entire world. A 2019 Jerusalem municipal report confirmed this. Within certain neighborhoods, you can find 10 falafel shops within a 5-minute walk. Now, basic economics tells us that in a low-margin business like deep-fried chickpeas, that kind of saturation should lead to a price war or a mass exodus of businesses. Yet, the shops persist. They do not close. They do not lower prices to undercut the neighbor. They sit in a state of perfect, eerie equilibrium.
It is called market equilibrium, Hilbert. Everyone knows what a falafel costs. If you charge more, you lose customers. If you charge less, you go broke. It is not a conspiracy, it is a math problem.
Is it? Let us move to fact number 2. The Ottoman Empire. Under Ottoman rule, Jerusalem operated under the millet system. This allowed religious and ethnic communities to manage their own internal affairs, including trade guilds. These guilds were not just clubs, they were ironclad economic cartels. We have historical records showing that spice trade families in the Old City formed tight-knit networks that controlled the flow of cumin, coriander, and chickpeas. These families did not just disappear when the British Mandate began or when the State of Israel was established. They adapted. They moved their capital into shell companies and shifted from wholesale spice trading to retail dominance.
Hold on. You are saying that a guild from the 1800s is currently fixing the price of a side of tahini. That is a massive leap.
It is a bridge, Herman, and I am crossing it with evidence. Investigative reports from local logistics watchers have documented a curious phenomenon. If you stand outside the Makani Yehuda market at 4 in the morning, you will see unmarked delivery trucks, not the big corporate ones, small white vans. These vans service multiple independent shops across the city, shops that claim to have different owners, different recipes, and different suppliers. But the bags of flour and the jugs of oil coming off those trucks are identical. I have traced business registration records for several of these seemingly rival establishments. What did I find? Overlapping addresses. Registered agents that share surnames with prominent spice merchant families from the 19th century. They use different surnames for the storefronts, of course. One shop might be named after a grandfather, another after a cousin. But the money flows back to the same central reservoir.
Wait, the shared logistics thing is actually interesting. I have seen those white vans. But if one family owns everything, why keep so many storefronts? It seems like a massive headache. Why not just have 5 big, efficient shops instead of 50 small ones?
Because of territorial flooding. This is a classic monopolistic tactic. By saturating the market with your own shell companies, you make it impossible for a real outsider to enter. If a new, independent falafel shop tries to open, they find themselves surrounded by 3 phalanx shops. The phalanx can afford to run those 3 shops at a loss for 6 months just to squeeze the newcomer out, because the profit from the other 40 shops covers the deficit. It is a strategic wall of chickpeas. They create the illusion of choice, so the regulators never look for a monopoly. If there are 50 owners on paper, the antitrust authorities stay home.
Hilbert, I am looking at the margins here. Falafel is cheap. The overhead of renting 50 storefronts in Jerusalem, which has some of the highest commercial real estate prices in the Middle East, would be astronomical. The math does not check out. Unless they are laundering money, there is no way a family makes more money by running 50 tiny shops than by owning the buildings and renting them to actual competitors.
You are thinking like a modern venture capitalist, Herman. You are not thinking like an Ottoman spice lord. This is not just about the profit on the pita, it is about land tenure and presence. Many of these families have held these properties since the mid-19th century. They do not pay the market rate because they own the dirt. By keeping the shops in the family, they maintain a physical grip on the strategic corridors of the city. From Ben Yehuda to Emek Rephaim, they are the gatekeepers of the street-level economy. And as for the employee silence, it is a clan structure. You do not whistleblow on your uncle. You do not audit your own father.
But the food is different, Hilbert. The falafel at the shop near the Jaffa Gate is spicy. The one near the central bus station is heavy on the parsley. If it is one big monopoly, why is the product inconsistent?
Theater. Pure theater. They employ different seasoning profiles specifically to maintain the illusion of independence. They want people to have arguments about which one is better. Those arguments are the ultimate cover. If people are debating which shop has the crispier exterior, they are not asking why every shop in the city raised their prices by 2 shekels on the exact same Tuesday in April.
That is just inflation. The price of oil went up for everyone.
Or the phalanx decided it was time for a dividend. Look at the 2019 municipal report again. It notes the high density of food service, but also notes a weirdly low rate of bankruptcy for these small shops compared to other sectors. In a city as volatile as Jerusalem, small businesses should be failing constantly. But the falafel shops stay. They are the constants. They are the bedrock. I challenge you to find me one independent falafel shop that has successfully opened and stayed open for 5 years without being part of the established family network. You cannot do it.
I can think of 3 right now in the German colony.
Check the land registry, Herman. Check who holds the lease. I guarantee you will find a name that traces back to a spice warehouse in the old city circa 1880. This is the falafel phalanx. They controlled the spices under the Sultan. They controlled the grain under the British, and they control the street today. It is a total vertical integration of the Jerusalem palette.
I have to admit the family connection thing has some weight. Jerusalem is a small town in a big way. Everyone is related to someone. But a secret monopoly? It feels like you are turning a tight-knit community into a Bond villain organization.
Most Bond villains wish they had this much longevity. The phalanx does not need a volcano base. They have a deep fryer and a prime location on every corner. They have survived wars, uprisings, and economic collapses by being the one thing the city cannot live without. They are the invisible hand of the marketplace, and that hand is covered in tahini.
It is a bold claim, Hilbert. Strained, bordering on the absurd, and I suspect you are ignoring the very real pressure of the Jerusalem Municipality's licensing board, which is a nightmare for everyone. But I will give you this. I am going to look at the delivery vans differently tomorrow morning.
That is all I ask. Look at the vans, look at the prices, and ask yourself why the competition feels so much like a choreographed dance. I am confident in this case. The evidence is in the Peter. Tell me I am wrong. I dare you. Actually, do not tell me I am wrong. Just try to open your own shop and see how long you last before the phalanx closes ranks.
On that ominous note, Hilbert, thank you for bringing some spice to the corner. I think I will have a salad for lunch.
That is probably for the best. Though, I have some theories about the cucumber supply chain that you might want to hear first.
No, we are done. Get back to the producer booth, Hilbert.
I am going. But remember, the chickpeas never lie.
All right, well, that was certainly a lot to digest. I feel like I need a glass of water and a background check on my local deli. Herman, you have been scribbling furiously over there. What is the initial verdict from the desk of reason?
My hand is cramping, corn mostly from trying to keep up with Hilbert's leaps in logic. Look, there are pieces of this that are actually grounded in reality. The Ottoman millet system was very real, and it did absolutely foster these multi-generational trade guilds that operated with a high degree of autonomy. And Hilbert is right about the 2019 municipal report. Jerusalem has an absurd number of food stalls. It is literally one of the densest markets in the Mediterranean. But Hilbert, you are asking us to believe that a 19th century spice guild has transitioned into a high-tech, shadow monopoly that uses territorial flooding tactics usually reserved for Starbucks or predatory tech companies. My biggest red flag is the labor. How do you keep hundreds of teenage servers and line cooks from blabbing about the Great Chickpea Syndicate?
It is not a secret to the people inside, Herman. That is what you are missing. It is a clan structure. In these traditional networks, you do not hire a stranger off a job board. You hire your nephew. You hire your neighbor's son. The loyalty is baked into the social fabric. It is not a conspiracy to them. It is just the family business.
But the business registration record you mentioned, you said you found overlapping addresses?
Exactly. 3 different shops on Jaffa Street, all listed under different trade names, but their registered mailing address for tax purposes is the same office in the Christian Quarter. An office that, incidentally, has been owned by the same family trust since the British Mandate.
See, that is the part that gets me. The white vans and the tax addresses, that feels like actual shoe leather reporting, Hilbert. But I have to ask the naive question here. Why falafel? If this family is so powerful and has held land since the 1800s, why are they bothering with a $5 sandwich? Why not move into luxury hotels or high tech? If you have the capital to corner the market, why pick the lowest margin item on the menu?
Because of the cash, corn. Falafel is a high-volume, cash-heavy business. It is the perfect way to move liquid capital through a city without leaving a massive digital footprint. Plus, it provides something better than high margins. It provides presence. If you own the falafel stands, you own the street level. You see who is coming and going. You have eyes on every corner. It is about cultural and economic gravity. You do not just influence the economy, you are the economy.
I am still struggling with the overhead, Hilbert. You mentioned 50 shops. Even if they own the dirt, the electricity, the licensing, and the labor for 50 separate kitchens is a logistical nightmare. If I am a monopoly, I want one giant factory and 100 delivery drivers. I do not want 50 individual deep fryers. The inefficiency of your phalanx is actually the strongest argument against it existing.
Unless the inefficiency is the point. If they consolidated into 5 mega shops, the Israeli Antitrust Authority would be through their doors by Tuesday morning. The fragmentation is the camouflage. They are hiding in plain sight by appearing disorganized. You call it inefficiency, I call it a premium, paid for invisibility.
It is like a stealth bomber made of chickpeas. I actually find myself strangely charmed by the idea that there is a secret spice lord sitting in a back room somewhere, watching a wall of monitors showing the oil temperatures across the city. But the taste, Hilbert. You ignored my point about the recipes. I have had bad falafel in Jerusalem, and I have had life-changing falafel. If it is one company, why is the quality so erratic?
Corn, you are a marketing man's dream. If every shop tasted the same, you would notice the monopoly in a heartbeat. They have to vary the spice blends. One shop uses more cumin, another uses more parsley. They probably have a rotating schedule of who gets to be the top-rated shop on travel websites this year. It keeps the tourists moving and the locals arguing. As long as you are arguing about who has the best pita, you are not looking at who owns the building.
I did a quick search while you were talking, Hilbert. I looked up the land registry for a couple of the spots you hinted at near the Jaffa Gate. There is a name that keeps popping up. It is an old family name, and yes, they were historically involved in the spice trade. But they are also involved in about 20 other legitimate industries. Is it possible you are just seeing a successful old money family that happens to own a lot of real estate, and the falafel shops are just their tenants?
Tenants who all happen to use the same unmarked white delivery vans at 4 in the morning. Tenants who all raised their prices by 2 shekels in the same week. That is a very coordinated group of renters, Herman.
I love the mental image of the white vans. It feels very Cold War. All right, we need to move towards some initial scoring before we let Hilbert give his final defense. Herman, you are the man of facts and figures. Where are you sitting on this one?
This is a tough one. On the one hand, the historical basis is surprisingly solid. The trade guilds and the family-based economic structures of Jerusalem are well documented. The municipal report on shop density is also a real, verifiable fact. However, the jump from family real estate holdings to a secret price-fixing cartel is a canyon I am not quite ready to leap across. For credibility, I am going to start with a 4 out of 10. It is better than your usual lizard people stuff, Hilbert, but the economic incentive just is not there for me. For imaginativeness, though, I will give you a 7 out of 10. Turning a street snack into a centuries-old shadow government is top-tier creativity.
4 and a 7. Tough but fair. For me, I am actually feeling a bit more generous on the credibility side. Maybe it is because I have spent too much time in those alleys, but I have always felt like there was a weird energy to how those shops operate. The way the owners all seem to know each other but pretend they don't, it rings true. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for credibility. The shared logistics fans really pushed it over the edge for me. As for imaginativeness, I am going all the way up to an 8 out of 10. The Falafel Phalanx is a fantastic name, and the idea of Ottoman spice lords controlling the modern street food scene is the kind of historical thriller I would pay to see in a theater.
An 8? Corn, you are a soft touch. He has you thinking about the chickpeas.
They are delicious, Herman, and potentially part of a grander design. So, that puts us at a combined credibility score of 10 out of 20 and an imaginativeness score of 15 out of 20. Hilbert, you have a solid foundation, but you have some work to do to convince Herman that this is not just a case of a few cousins owning some shops.
I accept those scores for now. But before we go to the final verdict, I have a few more documents regarding the specific shipping manifests of those white vans that might change your mind about the inefficiency of the operation.
If you have an actual manifest, I might move my score. but it better not be a grocery list written in crayon.
We will find out after the break. We are going to let Hilbert gather his papers, and when we come back, we will get the final rebuttal and see if the judges are officially convinced or not. You are listening to my weird prompts. Do not go anywhere, or the phalanx might find you.
They already know where you are, Korn. They saw you buy that pita yesterday.
Great. Now I am looking over my shoulder. We will be right back.
A 4 for credibility, Herman. Truly, you are a man who would watch a synchronized swimming team and conclude they all just happened to have the same cramp at the same time. And Korn. A 6 is generous. But you are still treating this like a charming urban legend. I am not here to tell you a ghost story. I am here to describe a vertical monopoly that has survived 3 empires and 2 world wars.
It is the math, Hilbert. You still have not explained why a powerful family would waste their time on chickpeas when they could be building luxury high-rises on that same land.
That is exactly the point I was waiting for. You think a monopoly wants to grow. A true, ancient monopoly wants to persist. If you build a Hilton, you attract international auditors, tax lawyers, and the global press. If you run 40 falafel stands, you are invisible. You mentioned the overhead, Herman. You said 50 separate kitchens are inefficient. You are right, if they were actually separate, but they are not. This brings me to my first piece of new evidence. I spent 3 weeks tracking the waste management contracts for 11 different shops across the new city and the old city. Do you know what I found? They do not use the municipal grease trap services. They all contracted a private firm called Kedem Environmental. I looked into Kedem. It is a shell company, registered to a holding group in Cyprus, which is owned by a trust whose board members share 3 surnames with the 1922 Jerusalem Chamber of Commerce Spice Committee. They are not running 50 kitchens. They are running 1 centralized prep facility and distributing pre-mixed batter in those white vans I mentioned. The kitchen in the shop, that is just for the final fry. They have achieved industrial scale while maintaining the appearance of a mum-and-pop shop.
Wait, a centralized batter facility. That would explain how they keep the prices so perfectly synced.
Exactly, Korn. And to your point about the taste being different, I spoke to a former fry cook who worked at 3 different locations over 10 years. He told me the instruction manuals are color-coded. Blue manual means heavy coriander. Red manual means more garlic. It is a flavor profile rotation system. They deliberately engineer the inconsistency to keep the foodies and the tourists from getting suspicious. It is a psychological operation disguised as a side of pickles.
Okay, fine. Let us say they have a central kitchen. You still have not addressed the whistleblower problem. How do you keep hundreds of cousins and nephews from talking to the press or the tax authorities for 100 years?
I concede that the human element is the hardest part to wrap your head around, Herman. You are right. In a modern, individualistic society, someone would have talked. But you are applying a Western corporate lens to a Middle Eastern clan structure. This is what you missed. In the 1950s, after the transition to the State of Israel, these families established a series of internal benevolent societies. They provide interest-free loans, dowries, and education funds for their members. If you are a young man working the fryer at a phalanx shop, you are not just an employee. Your apartment is subsidized by the family trust. Your sister's wedding was paid for by the guild. Your kids' school supplies come from the central office. You do not whistleblow on the hand that literally feeds, houses, and educates you. It is not a conspiracy of silence. It is a covenant of survival.
That is actually a very compelling point about the social fabric. It makes the monopoly look more like a community safety net.
It is both, Korn. It is a gilded cage made of tahini, but here is the clincher. The piece of evidence I was saving for the final bell. I spent the last week digging through the digital archives of the Jerusalem Municipality Zoning Committee from the late 1990s. Specifically, the period right before the light rail construction began on Jaffa Street. Every single independent business on that corridor fought the construction. They sued for lost revenue. They protested. They went bankrupt. Except for the falafel shops. Not only did they stay silent, but every single one of them renewed their long-term leases 6 months before the construction was even announced to the public. How did they know? Because the phalanx does not just own the shops. They have had a seat at the table of every planning commission in this city since the Ottomans were drafting maps on parchment. They did not just survive the light rail, they used it to consolidate. While the independent cafes were dying from the dust and the noise, the Phalanx bought up the neighboring leases through more shell companies.
You are saying they have insider information at the municipal level.
I am saying they are the municipal level. They are the permanent civil service that outlasts every mayor and every prime minister. Now, look at your notes again. Look at the density of shops. Look at the identical vans. Look at the shared tax addresses in the Christian Quarter. And tell me that 50 different families just happen to make the exact same perfect economic decisions for a century. All I am asking is that you look at the evidence with fresh eyes. This is not just lunch. It is a map of who really owns the street. The chickpeas never lie, Herman. They just wait for someone to notice the pattern. I am asking you to reconsider your scores. This is not a 7 for imagination. This is a 10 for documented reality.
My head is spinning. Herman, he is making a lot of sense about those leases.
He is making a lot of something. But I have to admit, the grease trap company is a very specific detail to make up.
I did not make it up, Herman. Look at the manifest. It is right there on the top of the pile. Or are you afraid to see the truth behind the Peter?
All right, we have heard the evidence, we have heard the rebuttal, and my stomach is doing backflips that have nothing to do with the hot sauce. It is time for the final verdicts on the Falafel Phalanx. Herman, as our resident skeptic and keeper of the spreadsheets, I am going to let you take the first shot at the king.
I have spent the last few minutes frantically searching for Kadam Environmental and the Cypress holding company Hilbert mentioned. And I hate to say this, Hilbert, but those entities actually exist. The paper trail is real. The fact that you found a centralized batter distribution system disguised as independent kitchens is, frankly, the most convincing piece of evidence I have ever heard on this segment. It solves the consistency problem and the overhead problem in one fell swoop. However, I still struggle with the idea of a shadow government of chickpeas. The leap from a very successful, slightly secretive family business to a centuries-old spice monopoly controlling the fate of the city is still a massive stretch for me. For my final credibility score, I am moving from a 4 to a 6 out of 10. You backed up your wild claims with actual logistics, and that deserves respect. For imaginativeness, I am staying at a 7 out of 10. It is a brilliant narrative, even if I think you are misinterpreting a very standard, albeit old-fashioned, family conglomerate. As for my vote, I am not convinced. I believe there is a massive family monopoly, yes, but I do not believe it is a sinister, world-altering phalanx. It is just a very efficient way to sell fried beans.
Wow, a 6 from Herman. That is practically a standing ovation. For my part, Hilbert, you really pulled me in with the story of the light rail construction. The idea that these shops knew the zoning changes 6 months in advance while everyone else was going under, that is the smoking gun for me. That is not just good business, that is deep systemic influence. It explains why the street level of Jerusalem never seems to change, even when the rest of the world is on fire. I am moving my credibility score up from a 6 to an 8 out of 10. I genuinely believe you have uncovered a hidden layer of the city's economy that most people are too hungry to notice. For imaginativeness, I am bumping you up to a 9 out of 10. The color-coded manuals for different spice profiles? That is the kind of detail that makes a conspiracy feel alive. It is beautiful, it is terrifying, and it makes me want to go buy a pita just to see if I can spot the red manual. My final vote? I am officially convinced. I will never look at a white delivery van the same way again. The Phalanx is real, and we are all just living in their world, one side of tahini at a time.
1 out of 2. I will take it. Herman, you are a hard man to move, but a 2-point jump in credibility is a win in my book. And Korn, I am glad someone finally sees the truth. Just remember, when you go out for lunch tomorrow, look at the guy behind the counter. Ask yourself if he looks like an employee, or if he looks like a man who knows exactly what the city council is voting on next Thursday. The truth is out there, usually wrapped in a thin paper bag and served with extra pickles. I'm going back to the booth now. I have some audio to scrub, and I need to see if my favorite stand changed their manual to blue this week.
He is actually going to do it. He is going to go stake out a fryer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The Falafel phalanx has been laid bare. Whether you believe it is a centuries-old shadow monopoly or just a very well-organized family business, one thing is for sure. You are never going to look at street food the same way again. I want to thank Hilbert for another fantastic installment of Conspiracy Corner. You can find all the links to the municipal reports and the weird delivery van photos he mentioned over at myweirdprompts.com. We are also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we have a very active Telegram group where you can submit your own theories for Hilbert to investigate. What do you think? Is the phalanx watching you, or is it all just a bunch of hot chickpeas? Let us know on social media. This has been episode 1963 of My Weird Prompts. I have been your host, Korn, joined by the ever-skeptical Herman Poppleberry and our producer, the man who knows too much, Hilbert Flumingtop. Stay weird, stay suspicious, and for heaven's sake, watch out for the white vans. Good night, everyone. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the flows from slow